Hey, what's up? My name is Chris, and in this tutorial, we're going to talk to you about how you can customize a bash agent. What's a bash agent, you might ask? Well, basically, it is an agent powered by a Nemotron model in this case that can execute bash commands on your computer. So you can interact with it in natural language and get back responses that do things like CD or LS and interact with your machine. We're going to take this idea and extend it by adding a brand new CLI tool. This is going to be the LangGraph CLI tool, though you can choose whichever CLI tool you most prefer. The idea is we need a few things to get this going. One is a big old pile of synthetic data, which we're going to generate through NeMo Data Designer with the help of Nemotron 3 Nano. Then we're going to need to train the model. We're going to use reinforcement learning here. Specifically, we're going to use Unsloth, which is going to help us do group relative policy optimization, or GRPO, which is going to help us train the model quickly. In order to do this, though, we need some kind of reward signal. For generating that reward signal, we're going to actually use NeMo Gym, which is integrated with Unsloth. The idea is that we can build a gym environment, which is going to then provide our model with helpful signal to make sure that I can do this task better. We're going to jump right into the notebooks. If you want to follow along, they're available in the link down below, and let's get started. All right, so now we're in the code. We're going to look at what we actually want to build. The idea is that what we want to build is this tool that we can ask questions to, and then if necessary, it can run simple commands. If you want to go deep on how we build this agent, how we think about safety with this agent, we have a whole tutorial on that, which is going to be linked down in the description below. But here's an example of how we can use it. Bring the LangGraph server online, agent I can execute, LangGraph up, wait. Do you want to execute this command? Yes or no? And then if we do, server started successfully on port 8000. So this is what we're trying to actually build. And this is going to be part of how we do it, which is we're going to start by generating, again, that big pile of synthetic data using NeMo Data Designer. Then we're going to go ahead and use Unsloth GRPO plus NeMo Gym. NeMo Gym is the thing that's going to provide the rewards. We'll look at that in a little bit. And then we're going to have our human-in-the-loop execution of our agent. There are some prerequisites for this notebook. First of all, we're going to be using 16-bit LoRA. We are going to need about 60 gigabytes of GPU RAM, which means we're going to want to run this on an 80 gigabyte card. You're also going to need to make sure that you're using Ubuntu 22.04. We haven't tested the other distributions, so it may work, but if you want to know that'll work for sure, please use 22.04. Then finally, of course, we're going to be using Python, CUDA, and UV as outlined here. This is the basic idea of what we're going to be doing and about how long it's going to take. So we're going to first start with some setup, which is going to be generating our environment. Then we're going to make some data. Next, we're going to train the model. This is going to take the longest amount of time, so I recommend setting aside an afternoon for this. And then finally, we're going to actually run and use our agent. Let's look at our synthetic data notebook. This is going to be what helps generate the data we're going to use to train the model. So what we know we need to do is have some way to map natural language requests to a command for LangGraph. And the way we're going to do this is actually a little bit interesting. First of all, we're going to have a big old field, which is going to handle all of our different commands or subcommands and flags. We're going to set up a model to help us generate some data, and that's actually going to be Nemotron 3 Nano 30B A3B. This is our latest Nano model, and it's a hybrid MOE model. So it's both a hybrid Mamba transformer model and also an MOE. So next we have some sampler columns, and what these columns are going to do is actually something very interesting. So you can notice that they have the actual values that you might expect to appear in our command line. And what we're going to do with them is actually sample them to construct valid commands. Once we have those valid commands, we're then going to have an LLM generate a query that may result in those commands. So we're actually starting with valid commands and then producing a query that could result in them. This is to make sure that our data describes actual commands that can actually work. Here we have our final data designer config builder. What this is it tells us exactly all the commands or columns that we have and what those map to. You'll notice that we have a bunch of sampler columns, as we discussed, and then we have our LM text columns and our LM structured columns. This is going to convert our list of commands, or list of commands plus flags, into a structured JSON object. Data Designer is actually going to let us preview how this will work. So what we can do is we can preview our config with 5 records and then look at how those 5 records look. The idea here is that this lets us test things before we dedicate to a full generation. You can see that Data Designer checks a number of things. It's using NVIDIA Nemotron 3 Nano 30B A3B as the model to generate that synthetic data. And finally, we can look at our outputs and see that we do have what we'd expect, natural language commands, and we have these structured JSON objects that we can convert into running a command in our terminal environment. All that's left to do is, instead of using preview, create the number of records that we desire. For this case, we're going to create 250 records. Next, we're going to save our data into a training and testing split, and that's it. We are done. We've generated all the synthetic data that we need with Data Designer, and it was very painless. Excellent tool. Very happy that we were able to use it for this tutorial. Next up, we're going to actually look at our NeMo Gym resource server. What this is it allows us to build a server that's going to be used to score or verify what our model comes up with. As you can see in our scoring logic section of this server, the idea is basically straightforward. We are going to take some response and we're going to try to extract JSON from it. And we're going to see if that JSON is the valid JSON required for us to execute the correct command. You can see there are a number of things that we care about scoring here. Things like if it's the wrong command, we get -1 points. If it's the correct command, we are going to get +1 for each correct flag or -1 for incorrect values or hallucinated extra flags. And then we have an exact match, which means we did it exactly as we would have expected. All of this is easy to implement and set up through our NeMo Gym. And this NeMo Gym is actually going to be directly compatible with Unsloth. Speaking of Unsloth, what we're going to do now is head to our Unsloth training notebook where we can see the idea of running our server. So this server is something that you're going to run in a terminal, and then we're going to just make sure that it's working and everything is as expected. Next, we're going to load up our model. The idea here is we're going to use the fast language model from Unsloth to do this. Then we're going to apply our LoRA adapters. We're going to run a quick test to make sure that a resource server is behaving as expected. We're going to set up our GRPO config, as you can see here. And then we're going to set up our GRPO trainer, as you can see here. You'll notice that we have this wonderful rewards computed via NeMo Gym server at. And finally, we're going to run the actual training. It's going to train for a long time, and we should see our rewards improve on average as training progresses. In this case, we're using 100 steps. If you wanted to see a greater improvement, you could use more steps or more data. There are plenty of ways that we could improve the quality of our training, but this works for a short afternoon. Finally, we can test our model and see what it does. You can see here that we asked the model to create a new project using the React agent template, and we get the command we would expect, which is new React agent. We can ask it to start a new dev server on port 8080 without opening the browser, and we see here again the command we would expect. This is the idea. We've built a tool that can now be leveraged in order to run commands from the agent. And that's really it. The only thing left to do is for you to run that agent and see what it can do. If you want to read the blog or work through the notebooks as you saw in the tutorial yourself, they're going to be available in the links down below. Thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.